With that, let's go ahead and officially kick things off. Welcome, everyone, to another NinjaOne webinar. Today, we are talking about automating endpoint efficiency. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, I did want to talk a little bit about some housekeeping items. First and foremost, this session is being recorded. So if you have to leave for whatever reason, this will be emailed to you tomorrow. It will also be posted to our YouTube channel. So if you want to subscribe on YouTube, you'll also see that probably get uploaded sometime tomorrow. Secondly, we do have a giveaway that we will announce at the end of the webinar. We'll bring out JP to announce the winner of one of 4 pretty good prizes that we have on offer today. Uh, Nothing you need to do to register for that. By being here, by registering for this webinar and showing up, you have been entered to win. And then lastly, we do have a Q&A section inside of Zoom. It is much easier for me to keep track of what is in the Q&A section compared to the chat, which scrolls by very quickly. So if you have something that you would like me to address, please make sure you use the Q&A section. And then, of course, use the chat for general discussion. I'm always interested to hear how people who have been in the industry for decades, have a lot of experience, react to some of the scenarios that we talk about on these webinars. Now, with that, let's go ahead and we can finally officially start the webinar. Quick question from Chris here. He thought that they would have the ability to put scripts in the sys tray for end users to run. Yes, that is in this 6.0 release, and it's actually something that we'll show today. So we are discussing automation on the NinjaOne platform, and I wanted to start by talking about the types of automation. Now, these aren't the types of automation that we have inside of NinjaOne. This is more of a abstracted, holistic view of automation and where it fits into a particular process. At the very top, we have fully automating a process from end to end, and this is the platonic ideal, right? This is what we wish we could do with everything. We can take a process and step 1 to 10, step A to Z, we're able to go ahead and not really have any human interaction with that process in any way, shape, or form. And so that eliminates the workload entirely. And so we'll talk about how we can automate that process from end to end, but then we'll also talk about situations where we're using partial automation. And so this is a situation where we have NinjaOne automating part of a process, maybe the most labor intensive, the most manually intensive part of the process. We can use NinjaOne to accelerate that, but maybe we can't fully automate the process for whatever reason. It could be that it's not a good idea to automate, which is something we'll talk about a lot over the course of this webinar, which is just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should address. So we'll talk about the instances where you do want to automate or where you don't want to automate. And of course, sometimes it's just not feasible. Sometimes things cannot be automated because it just doesn't exist or the situation doesn't lend itself to an automated process. We'll also talk about where NinjaOne fits in as a cog in the automation wheel. So obviously, the ideal scenario, again, is that everybody has the NinjaOne agent. It does everything that you need, but we all know that that's not always going to be the case. You're going to have other tools, other services, and you're going to need the ability to have one tool, one service take care of one aspect of a particular task, and then have another tool take care of another aspect of the task a little bit later on. And so fitting into that process is something we'll also talk about here. Good example on that was on our YouTube channel, Ninja 101, and would highly recommend looking at that from the device provisioning context, which we'll talk about once we enter the demo portion. We'll also talk about how we can automate the collection of data. And this is really important because if we don't have a view of the entire picture, we don't have the information necessary to make the right decision, how are we ever going to make the right decision? At that point, we're just guessing. We're going off of vibes. And that's not always the right thing to do. We want to ensure that we're collecting data that is important to what we're trying to solve a problem for. And we need to have that information at our fingertips. Otherwise, if it's abstracted in some way, we're just not going to be able to, again, make the right decision, make intelligent decisions based off of data. And then finally, automation for the end user. Now, typically, we might think of automation in the context of eliminating work. And in this view, I think this is eliminating work for the help desk. It's eliminating work for an MSP or for an IT team, and that they don't have to deal with it. you're able to offload that workload to the end user so that they're able to either accelerate the troubleshooting process or even take care of the issue entirely on their own without the need to engage the help desk, without the need to engage somebody else and take up that time. And that just frees you up to work on more strategic issues and not deal with maybe the nitty gritty of troubleshooting all the time. Now, there are a variety of ways to automate in NinjaOne. This could be as a task, and I would define a task as running an automation at a scheduled point in time. And so this could be daily, weekly, monthly, running a recurring task that we want to run on our machines at a scheduled point in time. Now, I would contrast that with the condition. That's the second item on the list here. And so the condition is always on. It doesn't matter what time of day, that the issue or the automate that you want the automation to execute. As soon as we detect that there's an alert triggered or a device is out of compliance, we're going to go ahead and run that automation. And so a good example here is of BitLocker status. We might track BitLocker status. We can create an alert whenever BitLocker goes into an off state or into an unlocked state. And then that can trigger an automation to run in response to that, which might automatically unsuspend BitLocker or re-enable BitLocker on the volume. And so that's the difference between a task and a condition. In a task, that sort of workflow to monitor BitLocker, that might happen once a day as a task. As a condition, it's far more immediate, far more real time, and it really comes down to what is your exact need here. Do you want to keep track of this as in real time as a condition, or do you want to have it happen at a scheduled point in time that you control as a task? And I can see that there are definitely benefits and trade-offs depending on the exact situation that you're in. And that illustrates a larger point, which is that the automation I'm talking about today, I've done my best to make fairly generic as examples that are applicable to many people. But the fact is that not all automation is going to be applicable to all entities. I'll even show an example a little bit later in the demo portion where it's something that's not really applicable to how we operate here at Ninja, but it absolutely would have been applicable to how I manage devices at a previous position. And so that just goes to show that you need to evaluate your environment and really understand it before you make these decisions about what you want to automate or how you are going to automate. We'll also talk about automations as both scheduled and ad hoc in terms of their execution. So this might happen every system startup. This might happen every time a user logs in. This might happen on a recurring interval, let's say every couple of hours, every couple of minutes. But also you have the ability to package a series of automations and then run them with a one-click touch from the technician side. And so if you have the desire to troubleshoot issues with Windows Update, we can package a series of scripts into one single automation. And so from a technician perspective, they just need to initiate that one single automation, and a series of scripts actually executes and takes whatever action you want to do to try and resolve the issue, which in this case, this example, is revolving around Windows Update. And then finally, we'll take the end user automation via the systray. This is a new feature in 6.0. So if you are not on a regional instance of NinjaOne that is on 6.0, you won't have this quite yet. Right now, if you're in the APAC or the Australian Oceanic instance of Ninja, or if you're in the Canadian instance of Ninja, which is where I'll be doing my demonstration, you will have this. This should roll out tomorrow with the 6.0 release in the EU region, and then we'll see that roll out to our United States regions over the following 2 weeks. So everybody by the end of let's say, October 11th, I think, is in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. By then, everybody should have version 6.0 of NinjaOne, which would include the ability to execute automations from the systray. And we'll talk about a couple examples of how that can be beneficial for you. So what to expect before you're automating? We need to take into account some questions before we actually decide what we want to automate. Number one, first and foremost, should this be automated? That's a very important question to ask. We do a lot of automation-based webinars, and one thing that I do here in the chat is from people saying, I don't necessarily want to automate this. I don't necessarily agree that this should be a process that's automated. One person on our last automation-focused webinar last month brought up the concept of their technicians, they want them to figure this stuff out. They want them to do the manual process so that they're then able to learn more and become better technicians. And I'll echo that. Everything that I show here today is based off of experience in the industry, of being plagued by problems that I couldn't automate for years, and then just being motivated to find a solution for them so that I didn't have to do this work all the time. So that's certainly something to take into account as well. Not only should this be automated for process of helping your technicians learn more, but also sometimes it's just not safe to automate something. There are certain situations where I don't want to automate something because I think a human being needs to actually look at this. They need to provide their insight. This is not something that can be automatically fixed. So there's always an important question, always an important factor to keep in account whenever you're deciding what you're going to automate is, should I do this? Is this bringing demonstrable value? And that goes to our third bullet there, which is track your progress. Automations should provide a defined benefit. There should not be, oh, I just want to automate it just because you think it's annoying. You want to track how much time it's taking you as a manual process now, and then you want to see what an automation is actually going to save you. I'll be honest, I've certainly invested a lot of time in automations, and looking back, I invested way more time in creating an automation than that automation ever saved me, even years later, in terms of an ROI on my time and my energy. So always something to keep into account there. And of course, you want to do lots of testing. Everything that I'm showing here today, examples will be posted in our Discord. We'll actually go ahead and pop a link to the Discord in the chat for anybody who hasn't joined, but we have a script share section of that server where we'll be posting all the scripts that we're going to be talking about today. I've also posted some other scripts in that script share section recently that I think are really valuable. I even see some questions in the chat that might be problems solved by some of those scripts in the Discord. So we'll certainly talk about that as well. Before we jump into the demo, I did want to go ahead and pop up a poll question here. I'm very curious. What are you not automating today that you wish you could? What is the annoyance in your life that you wish you could fix? We're going to pop that poll question up here. It's a free write field, so there's no predefined list here. I really am interested in hearing from you about what are the issues in your day-to-day that would be drastically improved by some level of automation. And please be as specific as possible because this is a wonderful opportunity for me to collect feedback about what people would like to automate. With that, we're going to switch over to the demonstration portion. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Hopefully everybody can see my screen here, assuming I did this correctly. Looks like I did for once. A question from Tony here before we kick off into it, which is why will the US instances get 6.0 last? It is because our largest customer base is in the US. And so we stagger the releases so that if we have any issues, they go out to where we have the smallest amount of customers. And that way, our largest amount of customers here in the US, they are not drastically impacted by any issues. I'll say in this case, the release so far seems to have gone fairly smoothly, so there haven't been any big issues. We expect that we're going to maintain on our current release schedule. So that's kind of the rationale behind it. We just have most of our customers here in the US, and so therefore we are being cautious. We go from smallest customer base to largest customer base. Let's go ahead and start with our first example, which is actually something that I have discussed in the past on previous webinars. And it is the concept of tracking which users on your device have administrator rights, and then determining if they are authorized to have those administrator rights. So first and foremost, this is driven by three custom fields. We're going to go into the administration section and then to devices, and I've created some role-based custom fields. Now, our very first custom field is this one right here, the local admins custom field. This is populated by a script from the template library that reports on all users who belong to the administrators group. The template library is a collection of scripts that are built by NinjaOne engineers and maintained by NinjaOne engineers to solve common problems in the IT space. In this particular case, which users have admin rights. So I import that from my template library. There are 240 scripts now in the template library. We just launched new ones 2 weeks ago. And you're able to then run that on a recurring basis and populate a custom field with this information. You can see that custom fields have many different types. You can see it could be an attachment, it could be a checkbox, it could be a link to another device, it could be a dropdown with custom menu selections. I leverage the multi-line field and the WYSIWYG field down here a lot. The multi-line field because it holds up to 10,000 characters of data, and the WYSIWYG field, or what you see is what you get field, because it holds 200,000 characters worth of data, and it also allows for custom HTML and CSS formatting, which we'll take a look at a little bit later on. So I have one custom field, the local admins field, that's populated by my template library script. I also have another custom field of everybody who is authorized to have administrator access on that device. Now, this is a device level field. So this means I only want to include administrators who are specific to this particular device. I have another field in a documentation field, which is accessible to all devices in the organization, where I am listing global administrators. This would be domain admins. This would be anybody who is supposed to be an administrator account across all devices in a given organization. So you can have your whitelisted admins at the org level. You can also have a whitelisted admin at the device level. And these are independent of each other. And so you can have what the script will do is cross-reference between the custom field we see here, the documentation field of our organization-wide admins, and then it writes the discrepancy into our third custom field, which is unauthorized admins or unauthorized administrator users. And so we have this workflow where we identify who is a local admin. We then compare who is a local admin against who should be a local admin. And if there's anybody who has admin rights who shouldn't have them, they get written into an unauthorized admins field. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at how this operates. For starters, we are going to go into my organization right here, and then I'm going to go to my documentation fields like so. Over here, I have my user management document, and all I've done is create two global admins here. Note that I have entered two in here because I want to whitelist both usernames, so they are separated by a comma. So you can have multiple global admins here, just make sure they're separated by a comma. And so now this means that both of these usernames are whitelisted. We're going to check for this device or this custom field right here. We're also going to check this against the device level custom field here to see if there are any other authorized administrator users that I care about. So down here at the very bottom, we can see that we have two local admins. They're both whitelisted here, and therefore we have no unauthorized admins found. We don't even have anybody authorized at the device level here. So let's go ahead and change that up a little bit. Let's go back to our documentation field. We'll go back to user management down here. And we will modify this. We will remove Junter as an authorized administrator user, like so. We'll go back to our device right here. And in this case, I'm going to manually run the script, but I'll show you how this is actually automated here in just a second. Let's check for our unauthorized administrator users, like so. We'll run that. And so that's going to go ahead, check against the documentation field, check against the device level custom field, check who actually has local admin rights, and then write that discrepancy into the custom field. And so in this case, we can see here, we did find an unauthorized user. Junter no longer authorized because they're no longer authorized in that documentation field. And so now this will change our custom field so that it does say that somebody is an unauthorized administrator. So just to show you that real quick, well, if this updated in time, we would see that, but it just hasn't updated quite yet. There we go. And so now we have an unauthorized admin, it's Junter. And so how are we going to automate the remediation here? This is our first example, so we're talking about how can we remediate this entirely from end to end. We've collected the data, we've identified that something is wrong, now we need to actually take the action. So let's go to the overview here. Let's go into our policy. And so here we can look at our check for unauthorized users. This is a script result condition. I am running this script on a recurring basis every 5 minutes. And if we get the danger text, danger, unauthorized admins found, we are going to go ahead and raise the alert. That triggers an alert within NinjaOne. Then in response to that, we have our actions. What are we going to take to solve the issue? In this case, we are disabling any local users who are listed as bad users according to that custom field. We are then going to force them to log off. So any users who are listed as unauthorized admins as this triggers, they're going to be disabled. Then we're going to force them to log off. And then we're going to rerun our script so that way our custom field is updated accordingly. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that this does rely on that local admin's custom field being populated. So you really want to align how often you run this script right here, this check, with your reporting of who has local admin rights. So keep in mind that custom field does need to be updated on a recurring basis of who actually has the local admin rights. So make sure that you align that custom field update with the script result condition cadence that we see right here. If we're checking every 5 minutes, but the actual list of who has admin rights is only updated every day, that's wildly out of whack. It's inefficient. It isn't really what we want to do or what we care about. But you can see how that creates an entirely automated process when we recognize that the unauthorized admins are no longer present on the device. We can go ahead and reset the alert. The when no longer met checkbox means that we will keep an active look at the root cause of the condition. And once that unauthorized administrator user disappears, we would be no longer met, and that would reset the alert. It could reset the ticket on the dashboard as well. Let's move on to our second example here, which is very much of a similar note to our first. And it's on the concept of establishing a whitelist of public IP addresses that a device can originate from. And so, very similarly to how we had our documentation field, where we specified all of our um, authorized administrators, we have the exact same thing under network management, authorized global public IP addresses right here. And so this is establishing a whitelist of where you can connect from. Same exact workflow. You can specify this organization wide. You can also make a device level custom field that specifies something that's specific to that particular machine. So you get the ability to do this broadly, kind of top down management style from the documentation fields, while also being able to make what are essentially device level overrides for devices that are, going to have the special ability to connect to more than one or many different public IP addresses. Now, this is a good example here of this isn't an automation that's applicable to everyone. And I'll give you a good example here, which is at Ninja, we would never implement something like this. We have other ways to control this sort of access. We're a global company, we're all over the world. So having a single public IP address just really wouldn't make sense. It would be far too large for us to corral and manage in any real way. However, many of you know that I previously worked for a movie theater chain, and this would have been something I absolutely would have implemented if I'd had the technology to do it at the time, because those devices weren't supposed to go anywhere. If those devices were originating from an IP address that was not the main corporate network, that was an immediate thing that I wanted to know about. That would also even give me insight if the main corporate network had failed over to the secondary network. If we were originating from a different IP address. So certainly a lot of value in some situations, but again, not broadly applicable to everyone. This is certainly something that if you tried to implement it in, like I said, a company like NinjaOne, this would be a mountain of noise that we would never recover from on terms of the ticket volume. So yes, certainly something that you want to know your devices. You want to know if they're going to be in a certain physical location with a consistent public IP before you implement anything like this. Just to give you the more cautious you know, angel on your shoulder about automation. It'd be very easy to be the devil on your shoulder talking about automate everything, but we do want to have a little bit of care here with how we're implementing all of this. We're going to look at another example of partial automation here, which is leveraging a script from a NinjaOne community member, Mikey O'Toole, who, if you're on the NinjaOne Discord, you almost certainly know because he is everywhere on there. But he has a wonderful blog and a wonderful GitHub that I would highly recommend that you check out. We, again, will link to that in the Discord. But his script actually checks for Windows support status. And so right here, this is his script. This uses the end of life API right here to check every single device to see if it is within both active support for Windows or if it's within security support for Windows. I'm going to go ahead and post this into the chat right now. That is a wonderful resource there. Highly recommend looking at it. Lots of good ideas. I am stealing merely one of them. Now we do need to create custom fields for this as well. So we would need to go into devices, and I think I made this a role-based custom field. We have our Windows active support right there, and then we have our Windows security support right there. And so if I go to a device again, like so, I can go to my custom fields all the way down to the very bottom. And then I can see that we're not in active support of Windows right now, but we are falling within the security-based scope of report. And so this is really useful. You could create conditions that monitor these custom fields so that if you're ever not in Windows security support, a ticket gets created and you have a list or a ticket associated with every single device that is not currently in Windows security support. You could alternatively make this a search group. So if we look at all of our online devices right here, this is a device search group where I have customized some filters at the very top and I've saved it and favorited it so I can load this up quickly and easily whenever I need it. In this case, it's Windows devices, servers, desktops, and laptops that are currently online. I've also customized the columns here to show relevant data. For example, what version of PowerShell is installed, what local users are installed, what local administrators are on the device, the operating system. And I can further customize this by using the gear in the top to then populate my Windows support status. So right there, active support and my security support like so. I will apply those, and you'll see that most devices haven't run this, but the devices that have, we can see right now quickly and easily if they're in Windows Active Support, if they're in Windows Security Support, and if there's anything we need to look at and address. Now, again, this is an example of partial automation. We're pulling data, we're letting you know whether devices are in or out of the security scope or the active support scope based off of that script. From there, it's a manual action. So now we know there's an issue, but in terms of actually getting devices upgraded to the latest version, you need to decide how you want to handle that. Do you want to run a script to try and just force the device to upgrade to the latest version? Do you want to handle this differently with licensing? It really kind of depends on your unique situation there. So let's go ahead and move on to our third example here. I'm going to switch tabs. And so we're going to be looking at the example I spoke about earlier, which is you can see more in depth on our YouTube channel. It's Ninja 101, how to provision devices, Windows devices. And so in that example, this is where Ninja fits in as a cog in your overall automation scheme. Because a lot of what I talk about in that video is completely not being handled by Ninja. I'm using a free PowerShell module to download and image a Windows device. I wanted to make that a zero-touch process, so I could just insert a USB into the device, boot from it, Windows would automatically be installed, and then I could include a provisioning package that installs the Ninja agent while also using an answer file or an unattend XML file to automate the out-of-the-box experience and do what I need to do. And so that's an example there where Ninja hasn't done anything to that point. We get a fully booted version of Windows, but there's nothing on it except the Ninja agent. At that point, that's where the Ninja One agent is taking over. And so we can configure our scheduled automations that we see right here to run once immediately. And this would mean that as devices join the Ninja One policy that we see here, they would automatically run this series of scripts. And so this right here, this is doing the actual heavy lifting of installing the applications that end users are going to need, of deploying device security settings so that it's configured and protected against potentially malicious attackers. It's going to deploy device configurations that are necessary just for regular operation. So let's go ahead and walk through some of these. Again, if you want a video on the whole process from A to Z, highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel, that Ninja 101 episode. What we're starting with first is changing the power and sleep settings. And this is so the device doesn't actually go to sleep. Uh, we are then going to set our network discoverability. We're going to enable BitLocker. We're going to install Dell Command Update because I designed this automation for Dell machines because that's what I have. And I want to make sure that I can update the firmware on them. Then we start to use some scripts from the template library to disable fast startup or fast boot. We're going to disable PowerShell 2.0. That's not relevant in our environment. We're going to disable SMBv1. We're going to disable weak TLS here. Now, these measures that we're talking about, again, you want to be aware of your environment. And if you have any applications, if you have any utilities that are going to need SMBv1 or haven't updated to support a more modern version of TLS. So certainly something to be aware of. Again, just goes to show that you need to know your environment before you can implement a lot of the security endpoint hardening discussions that we've had over these all the webinars so far this year. We're disabling CD-ROM drives, USB drives. We are blocking Windows 11. We are blocking the end users private. We're setting our inactivity timeout so that the device will lock after a certain amount of idle time at the keyboard. And then finally, we have a little display pop-up, which will generate a message to the end user saying, hey, we're done now. You can go ahead and continue to operate as you normally would. And so again, highly recommend checking out the YouTube channel if you want to see this process in more depth. But this is an example of where NinjaOne isn't doing the whole process from A to Z. We're kind of comfortably fitting in to what we do well while we're having other tools take care of other processes and kind of orchestrate the whole thing. Let's go ahead and move on to our next example, which is more security focused. And this is going to be geared around the concept of we want to collect data so that we can make actionable decisions. We saw a little bit of this earlier when we went to, we talked about the Windows support status. Are you in active support or are you in secure support? That Apparently, my automation didn't work because my device right here went offline. So I will be back in 5 seconds. I have to go wake it up. There we go. The end of chair cam. I am back. So that is booting up right now. While that boots up, I want to talk about the concept of what we're doing here today, which is leveraging another uh, PowerShell module, a free and open source PowerShell module known as Hardening Kitty. We will post a link to this in the chat here. I'll find it on GitHub real quick. But essentially, what this does is it compares the settings on your device against benchmarks, security baselines. There are several for you to choose from. I think in my example today, I'm using the Center for Internet Security or CIS benchmarks, but there are also Department of Defense STIGs or security technical implementation guides. There are Microsoft's own security baselines. There's many different options for that. So would highly recommend checking that out. Since it is a PowerShell module as well, I would recommend that you probably fork this to your own GitHub instead of using the public repository. So just a nice, since this is a security focused example, I figured we would do this right. You probably do want to fork that GitHub repo to your own GitHub so that you're in control of the code. So what we're doing here is we are running this PowerShell module, Hardening Kitty, in a audit-only mode. Is the process of making it less compatible. And I will tell you from firsthand experience, if you say, hey, PowerShell module, go ahead and automatically secure my endpoint, it's going to break something. It's almost a certainty. So you definitely want to be careful about how you implement uh, hardening on endpoints. This is really geared around giving you information so that you can start to make those decisions. And so one thing we talked about previously was the endpoint hardening score right here. I personally think this is of little value, to be quite honest, because we're looking at evaluating, let's say, 400 plus settings on the device, at least 400 plus settings on the device, and we're trying to condense that down into a score out of 5. That doesn't seem like that's going to give you the best picture. So what I've done is I have modified this so we actually go ahead and write this into a device custom field. Now you'll notice you don't see that here, right? We don't see that information. We don't see a list of all the endpoint hardening settings on the device. And that's because I have hidden that. If we go into our custom fields once more, actually I think it was a global custom field, we will see that I have my endpoint hardening JSON right there. And so what I have done is I've actually made this not visible to the technician because it's not relevant to them. I just need this custom field to hold data so that I can then redirect that data elsewhere for script. So you will need to name this exactly as I have named it here. And again, this is a WYSIWYG field, so it gives us 200,000 characters of data to work with. So I have that field right there. And then I have my script. And the script, whenever I execute it, however I choose to execute it, it is running a scan on the endpoint. It is comparing the security settings against my findings list. You can customize that findings list to your heart's content, depending on what you actually care about. And then it writes out a report into a CSV format of what all our findings were. Then we actually take that CSV, we convert it into a JSON file, and we store it in that endpoint hardening JSON that we see right there. Uh, from there, we're going to use a method that I have talked about a lot over the past couple months. It's an automated documentation server method. We're going to post a link to Luke Whitelock's website that outlines this process. Luke is a product manager here at NinjaOne. He oversees the custom fields that we see here, and he oversees the documentation product that we're about to take a look at. And so what we're going to do is take that JSON, we're going to go ahead and process it into a table format, and then we're going to upload it as a document into NinjaOne documentation. And so I can go to my apps and services right here, go to my endpoint hardening document. Here is my security compliance report for this particular device right here. And you can see I have a nice little pie chart here showing me where I've passed, where I failed, and then I've got a complete list here of the ID, the name of the setting, the test result, was it a success or was it a failure? You'll notice there's color coding for that in red and green as well, and then the severity of the finding. Now, this is not a complete list of everything that is in the report that's generated by the Hardening Kitty script. So yeah, highly would recommend that. One thing I'll note, I actually found this out this week or last week. I did not know this. If you wanted to instead update this to the knowledge base, the knowledge base does not have that character count limit. So I may in the future adapt this so that the complete endpoint hardening findings list gets uploaded to the knowledge base inside of NinjaOne so that we're not subject to that 200,000 character limit that we are in this particular view right here. So really useful. Again, this is not posted on Discord yet, but it will be posted before the end of the day. So really handy. I love this this little report here. I know that there were a lot of questions about how people could get this view. So hopefully you find this useful. Let's go ahead and move on to our final example, which is end user automation. Like I said earlier, I view automation as the concept of alleviating your team from having to do a process. And so whether that's having a script do all the work for you or using the API to automate something, or in this case, essentially just redirecting that workload to the end user, to me, that's a perfectly cromulent way of creating automation is offloading it to your end users. And so let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to accomplish that. We'll go into our automation here, go to branding, we'll go to our sys tray, and in my default sys tray right here, you can see I've created a few different options. I have my help request form. This would generate a ticket going to a PSA. In this case, I've given a few basic examples of applications. We have Google Chrome, VS Code, Zoom, and all they need to do is execute that from their device. I'm going to go ahead and hopefully my device didn't turn back off again in the time since I woke it up. We'll go into our demo organization here. We'll go into our desktop. We'll initiate a remote access session so I can show you what this actually looks like. Question from Paul here. He was asking about the name of the script that loads the fresh copy of Windows and then does these other installs. Again, I will highly recommend that you check out the NinjaOne YouTube channel right here. I will find that link to the YouTube video that I keep mentioning, and I will drop it into the chat for you. It is this one right here, how to provision devices. I will copy that and then close that so I don't have to stare at my face. And that is in the chat right now. So now we're actually in the device itself, or we would be once I move my window over. There we go. And I can go ahead and log in like so. And so now I'm on the desktop. We can go down here to the very bottom. So hopefully I am back a little bit better here. Let me see if I can stop my video too. There we go. Hopefully this is a little bit better. Yeah, I'm a ninja now. I'm in the background. So anyway, here we are looking at the actual device. We can see the sys tray icon down there at the very bottom. I can click on that. That's what the help request form would look like right here. Johnny Ticket Seed, we can go ahead and have him submit a ticket. We can go down here. We also could then run our automation. So I can go ahead and install Google Chrome like so. You'll see that in the activities feed right here. And there we go. We're using Chocolatey to actually install this. And so you can see this was requested by the end user. You'll see the name of the user who actually set this as well. So we can see that's going in the background. Another option here, this is actually inspired by something that came up on a recent webinar. Somebody wanted to know about the ability to raise a hand, say, what has happened, or I'm having an issue, here's my device. And this is really used in the context of somebody contacting the help desk, and you want to be able to easily identify that machine inside of NinjaOne. So we can actually go ahead and raise a hand. And all that is doing is that is going to write into a custom field a little hand emoji. And so we are able to then go to my devices here. I can go ahead and search for my raised hand group like so. And as that script executes, I'm going to see that appear right in this group. So as that automation is executing, and we'll actually go back to my device real quick. We can keep an eye on how that automation executes. Oops, wrong one. This one here. We can see this has completed here. So we should have Google Chrome installed. We can see our automation has started. And so now if we refresh here, there's our raised hand, there's our device. So this is a nice way to raise that hand, have somebody identify their device more easily here. You can see I created this device search group so that all I need to do is hit refresh and it'll appear here. I did set this so that the hand raises for 3 minutes. At the conclusion of those 3 minutes, we clear out the custom field. The concept here being that you just need to identify the device quickly. You can modify that time frame as you see fit. So that's a good option there as well. Then I also really love the system performance check. And so let's say somebody is having an issue. They want to run an on-demand system performance check. They can do so. Just click that option right there. This is a template library script that is going to collect a whole bunch of metrics and then place that in a device level custom field. You can see here, this presents a little message to the end user, letting them know not to restart because we do have processes ongoing in the background. And so what this does is this creates a custom field right here. And you'll see it. Oops, if I go down right here, this is the speed test. And so we can see when this is starting, when this is completed, when the last startup time was, haven't rebooted in a while, bad hef, CPU information, memory information. And so really useful to have this here. Now, one thing I will say, and one thing I've heard is that people say, as we expand with custom fields, this starts to get cluttered. And so we totally understand that. We do have plans to add in the ability to tab this out so that you can more granularly determine what data goes where and just make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to look at. However, using that same automated documentation server method that I mentioned earlier, I've decided to essentially offload this to documentation. And so if I go into my documentation here, I have my system performance check for each device. And so I can go ahead and create a related item here. I think I actually did this in a different example. If we go in here, you can see I actually have a related item there that quickly takes me back to the device in this example here. This will also be posted to Discord. I just think it's a nice way to take information from the device level, kind of circulate it over to the documentation section. It just is a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to the way that I think of things. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take some questions here since we have a little bit of time. So Chris is asking a question, ability to create new tabs. Yes, the idea is essentially that we're going to give you the ability to organize these custom fields way better so that it is easier for you to see what's immediately relevant and not just see kind of everything all at once. So yes, that is happening. All right, let's look here. I also recently realized on a webinar that my Q&A section was not defaulting to the most upvoted questions. So I sincerely apologize for that. Chris has a question. He notices that Ninja excels at system updates, but that user software updates seem to fail more recently. Have you an idea on how to approach fixing that? We are working on improving this. I know especially with Winget, I don't think we're really doing user-based installs very well right now, but we do have plans to improve that. For now, unfortunately, the only real way to address this is by using a script-based approach. We do include both the Winget as well as Chocolatey scripts in the template library that I mentioned earlier. And so you can use those and then leverage tasks or scheduled automations within NinjaOne to run when a user is logging in and going ahead and updating everything. So yeah, nothing on in the near term then, Chris, but yeah, we do have plans to improve the user-based installs. Yeah, let's go ahead and actually go to Discord real quick. Ari has a question about better script reporting. I'll say that for right now, we are taking that under advisement, but I am not sure we've officially decided how we are going to proceed. I would imagine that we're going to essentially have some version of an automation dashboard. So a new tab here so that you would be able to see that. That's still a ways away. I'm not going to pretend that's in the next few releases. That's a ways out. For the near term right now, let's say you wanted to report on this, you can use the API. And so what I have done in this particular case is create a workflow where you can report on script execution like so. Here's where I used a script to randomize a success or failure exit code, and then I reported and generated this report against that script. I would recommend here the Discord, I would recommend coming in here. This is where there are a lot of these scripts. You can see the script share section right there. There's my scripts from the OSD Cloud video. I know there were some questions about that. Here is the cumulative update patching report and documentation, which shows you the CUs for the month and then where they're installed. So a lot of good options in here. And then I have the script tracking one down here. So if you are interested in that, I am copying that and putting this into the chat. You will need to be in Discord. So you will need to also join Discord if you haven't already. If you are not in Discord, I will find the link real quick. Again, using the documentation to hold data that I use all the time. There is the Discord link. And I will paste that into the chat as well. So you will need to sign up before that any of the scripting links will work. JP asks, is there a means to uninstall an app using software patching or conditions? Suppose if a client didn't want to have Firefox, can Ninja detect and uninstall the application? Absolutely. So what we can do here is not in automation, template library. We do have a native script to uninstall applications. So on Mac OS or on Windows, we could also use Winget for this purpose if you wanted to. And what we can do inside of policies is actually monitor for an application. And so what we can do here is look for the presence or absence of software. Let's say we wanted to install something, we could look for it not existing. But in this case, we can say if it exists, we can use wildcards or asterisks on either side of the title so that we capture anything that happens to have Firefox in the name. And so this would generate the alert. In response to this, we would then run our uninstall application. Now, keep in mind, this does mean the application has to support being quietly uninstalled. Some applications don't. So you may need to use a dedicated uninstaller or a dedicated script for this purpose. One idea that I have been playing around with but didn't really have time to create is the concept of uploading all authorized software applications to a documentation field, uploading the software inventory from the API to a device level custom field, and then having devices look for any applications that are unauthorized. But of course, that would mean that you got to have the stomach to go through and actually create the whitelist and kind of follow through on the enforcement of it. So certainly a possibility, obviously not a native Ninja functionality, but I think there's some workaround potential there. Thomas asks, multiple conditions on a policy condition has been on the roadmap and I believe is in closed beta at the moment. Do we know how far away it is from going into release? That should be an open beta with the 7.0 release, which should be before the end of this year. In terms of it being a fully GA product, that's probably going to be the 8.0 release, which will be the first release of 2025. So hopefully here by, let's say, the end of Q1, I hope that's GA for everyone, but certainly the expectation right now is that this is going to be broadly available through the early access open beta that we have. That'll be in 7.0, which is likely to be kind of a late November timeframe, I think, for most people. Kevin asks, is NinjaOne documentation an additional cost? I think we just announced that we are making that free for customers for up to 3 users, I think. So yes, all of a sudden I went to the very bottom of my Q&A list. Chris asks, do you have a best practice for applying Dell updates, drivers, firmware? I would not say that I do have a best practice on this, but I would again certainly recommend the Discord here. There is a really wonderful Dell command update script inside of here. So highly recommend taking a look there. But in terms of best practices, I would defer to the chat on that one if you guys have any particular thoughts on this. There we go. That one's answered. Can you touch on custom scripts and policies for clients and how to ensure they are not seen by other clients in a shared environment? I would recommend the user permissions. So we'll actually go here, administration, accounts. We have these roles here that allow you to determine what somebody is capable of doing inside of the platform. And so in this case, we might want to go ahead and eliminate system access. So you can't do anything. In your particular case, you are going to want to restrict to specific organizations. So we can say the default access is going to be no access. But then for Enterprise North, we're going to go ahead and let you view that organization. You're then also able to limit down to specific devices, so maybe only Windows devices. I'm then able to also limit down to policies. So I would want to limit down to the policy that is applicable only for devices inside the given customer or given organization. And then finally, for scripts, you can create categories of scripts, and then you can organize them, and that allows you to then control what a technician is able to see, access, run, update, and delete inside of NinjaOne. So it's a bit of a big topic there, David. And if you have more questions about this, please reach out to your account manager and ask to talk with a sales engineer. Talking to a sales engineer is free and unlimited, just like talking to support here at NinjaOne. So it's a great opportunity to talk over what you want to do with somebody who's very experienced in the NinjaOne platform. Is there a way to create a ticket in NinjaOne through scripting? There is not, unfortunately not. Is there a way to block certain apps from running? There is not. We are not a zero trust application. We could certainly let you know when a banned blacklisted app is running, but we're not going to stop it at the point of execution. Chris asks, can you share your Dell command update install script? Yes, I just used Chocolatey. So I just used, I forget what it is, DCU up, I think in Chocolatey, but yes, that's what I used to install that. But I'll make a note of that in my notes that I share in Discord. With that, I'm going to go ahead and bring out JP, who is going to announce the winner who gets their choice of one of 4 pretty good prizes.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us today and making it through some of the tech issues that we were having. We run these webinars, every month. We're going to be releasing our upcoming slate of October webinars soon. So keep an eye on your email for that if you have our marketing updates turned on. You can also keep an eye on the NinjaOne events page for anything coming up. But I see some of you have already been, you've gone through this before, you know the drill. We're going to have drum rolls in the chat as I announce the winner. Bear with me for a moment. And today's winner is Carl DeCrosta. So big congrats to Carl. I'll be reaching out with an email on how to collect your prize. You have a choice of a DOS keyboard, a self-heating Ember mug, Switch OLED, or a Breville air fryer. So I'll be reaching out with details on how to collect that, and we will see the rest of you in the future. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, JP. One last question here, since I have time, from Paul. Does this take the place of Intune or work in conjunction? He's been trying to get better at Intune, but they never seem to have the time. I would say we largely work in conjunction with it. I wouldn't say we're a full replacement for Intune, because I know one of the primary values of Intune is autopilot and being able to automatically enroll in an MDM. And we are not an MDM for Windows devices yet. So that's not something we'd be able to accomplish. Now, what I will say is many people prefer working in Ninja because it's faster, and there's also not the licensing complexity that there is on the Intune side. For example, if you're trying to patch third-party applications with Intune, that's a per device cost. So yeah, with Ninja, that's included in our licensing. So many people prefer to do that. Many people prefer the real-time output of automations. So yes, I think we work tremendously well in conjunction with Intune. But for most people, they really like the autopilot enrollment workflow. That's something we wouldn't be able to fully displace. With that, it is the hour. So we are going to go ahead and end it. I apologize for the technical difficulties. I do have plans to hopefully alleviate that on our future webinars. So I do apologize for any disruption. I did see some people say that they would be unable to go into Discord. And so I'm going to cross post not just to Discord, but also in the NinjaOne Dojo. So keep an eye on the script share section form of the NinjaOne Dojo as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Hopefully next time you will see my face. Talk with you later. Take care and have a good rest of your day.